Hi, I'm Ines, I'm from Portugal, and I'm going to talk you a bit about the relationship between democracy and sustainability. I've actually I've started to work on sustainable degrowth some years ago, and I was trying to understand how can a government just implement the strong sustainability proposals that degrowth proponents are trying to advance. And so proposals like banning advertising or limiting resource use or even capping incomes, especially capping high incomes, they are very difficult to implement. And I've started to wonder if governments could do that with the democratic systems we have today, like the structure of the systems. And so I was trying to find new literature that just connected democracy and environmental quality, and that typically exists in political sciences and economics a little bit. And so theoretically we can have a positive connection between democracy and the environment protection, because in democratic systems we hear people's voices, so well, in principle. And so it's easier to connect with them and include their interests in the policy making. So theoretically that exists, but empirical studies are not finding that connection so easily. And sometimes it's positive, like in democracies we have positive responses, but we also have various limits, as we were talking about outside, like direct democracy has limits. And so what I'm trying to do is to develop an analytical framework to analyze this, because the current ones are very limited in terms of environmental sustainability. As I was saying, that they come from political science or economics, and they use just one dimension of environmental sustainability, like they connect democracy and air quality, or democracy and climate policy. And so I'm trying to do a more holistic development. I'm going to develop a more holistic analysis. And then I would like to analyze concrete policy proposals, like, for instance, why do the same European directives work or have more success in one country and don't have in another? And I want to understand if that has anything to do with the way democracy works in that country. And then I will go to the discussion again about strong sustainability and democracy, and how can we implement these kinds of measures without being in an authoritarian system, of course, and what is that has to do with democracy. Thank you.
Any questions about this? Shall I ask one? Could you give me like talk about your concrete examples there. Could you give me like an example of where like this would be most like applicable, and how looking at it through this lens would give you a different result in terms of policy?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to, I didn't decide yet, but I was thinking about for instance, the Water Framework Directive, because it has, this year they are going to have like the results from the last 10 years of policy. And so maybe it's interesting to see why some countries with the same guidelines, if they have more or less success in applying and implementing those policies. And for instance, if it has to do with the way public hearings are done, and where in the process people are heard. Yeah.
Are you optimistic?
Well, not from the current studies, because as Eric was saying, like, we need with the sense of urgency we have in environmental protection, it's how will we deal with that? Like, without, we cannot have like a strict bureaucracy, like scientists saying, we have to do this now, so implement those policies now, because people are not going to respond that well. And actually the success of the policy, it has to do with that, like the way people responded to the policy. So, well, I don't know. I'm not very optimistic about that, about the results. Like, I don't want to reach the conclusion that we need an authoritarian government, of course, so let's see.
Right. Thank you very much, Ines.